Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Ruth Kennison, who's founder of The Chocolate Project. I mean, it's chocolate. Can this conversation not be awesome? I don't think so. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about chocolate.
What is it about chocolate that you love so much that you basically made it your career?
Yeah, I did make it my career. Yeah, it was like a fourth career, but once I found it, I was like, "Oh, where has this been my whole life?" But I have always loved chocolate. My mom and I were both had huge sweet tooths. My sister did not, so I think we got to bond with that. And I do remember on my 16th birthday, every single guest, not like every guest, brought me a box of Godiva chocolate. That was and it wasn't, no one told them to. It was just a known fact that that's what I wanted was chocolate. And Godiva was like the height of fancy at that time in the 70s or 80s, whenever I was 16. Yeah, so I always loved chocolate, and it's been on the back burner for however many years, and then I refound it in my 40s.
How did you rediscover
Yeah, so
chocolate?
after like several careers and all sorts of movement and traveling, my husband and I love to travel, and we were traveling a lot, and we decided to kind of settle down, quote unquote, and have a child. And when I was pregnant, I did a pastry certification program. So I loved baking. I wasn't that into cooking. And I did the pastry course and I became a certified pastry chef. And my good friend was opening a cooking school. And she said to me, I want you to choose one thing. I had been teaching with her. I'd been teaching pastry making with her. And she saw I was a very good teacher. And she said, choose one thing and become an expert at it. So I was like, she was like, bread? I said, no, 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 chocolate. So I went on a very deep dive, deeper than she and I either one of us planned. So this was around like 2005 or six. I went and I was flying back and forth to Chicago, and I went to a French pastry school. I went to the Chocolate Calabo Chocolate Academy, and I just did this very, very deep dive. And I learned how to be a chocolatier. I was, and I thought I had never had any artistic bone in my body. I was very like organized. I was an organizer and a production assistant and all sorts of things. And I realized, oh, this is this form of art that combines like food and chocolate and art. Um, and so I started doing that and then cut to a trip to Paris, as every chocolatier does. And I took a trip to Paris with my husband, who was doing travel writing at the time. Lovely combo. And I met a woman there named Chloe Dutra-Roussel, who is the foremost expert on chocolate on the planet. And we were going from shop to shop to shop, and she was talking about the farmer and the bean and all these things. And I thought I was a very fancy chocolatier, realizing I knew nothing about chocolate because I didn't know where it came from. So that's when I did my first, what we call origin trip. And I went to Mexico with her. And we went through Tabasco and Chiapas. And I met farmers and I saw cacao trees and the bean and how it was processed and where it was from. And my head exploded. And I thought, well, if I don't know about this, then nobody does. So I came back home and decided to become a chocolate educator and teach like old, young, everybody about where chocolate comes from.
So, do you teach the chocolate making or do you teach the history or do you combine it?
Everything, everything. So because I was a chocolatier first, I can teach people how to make beautiful bonbons and truffles and all sorts of things like that. Then I became what we call a bean to bar maker. So I actually procure and source beans, and then I make the chocolate from that. And I teach bean to bar chocolate making, which is, when I started, literally there wasn't, class did not exist. So now there's a few of us around the country doing it, but it's not very well known. So there's not a lot of people doing this where we are teaching people to go from the bean to the bar. So I teach that. And then anything else that has to do with chocolate. Before the pandemic, I was going to schools a lot. Like I would go in every age, I could find something to talk to the kids about because there's so much history and economics and environmental issues woven into chocolate that I could literally cover everything from second grade on. So a lot of kids education, and then I do chocolate tastings the way one would do a wine tasting. Some people are calling themselves chocolate sommeliers. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but and I do chocolate judging. I judge awards and things like that. So anything that has to do with chocolate, I will do. In any event I'm doing, I'm going to weave the history and or education of into it because my goal is to make people better chocolate consumers and more educated about their chocolate. So not just like, yummy, this is good. I want to like elevate everything.
What is the Jewish connection to chocolate? Is
Ooh.
there one?
Um, there's definitely Jewish connection to chocolate as far as the history goes. And people have written a couple books about it. I've read them. And what I recall that was very important was the Jews were exiled from Spain in the 1600s. And a group of them went to Bayonne, France, in the south of France, it's near Bordeaux, and it's near the border of Spain. And they were making chocolate there. And they were the first chocolate makers in France, which is kind of amazing, and kind of amazing that nobody knows this. Um, and then, of course, the history gets sad when the people in France started not allowing. They basically taught everyone how to make chocolate in this area, and then they kind of didn't allow them to make chocolate anymore. And I think at one point there was maybe two Jewish chocolate makers and like 30 something non-Jewish chocolate makers. They had kind of taken over the field that the Jewish families had brought in. And then there's all these wonderful stories about different Jewish immigrants coming to the US and starting chocolate companies. So if you dig deep on different companies, you'll find a lot of Jewish connection. And then, of course, family, community, and eating. I would say Hanukkah gelt every year would be my favorite thing. Um, I wish more chocolate makers would make like delicious, wonderful Hanukkah gelt or more ethical or sustainable. And I know a couple of people are doing that. And the other thing that a lot of Jewish families don't know is we go to the kosher store and buy kosher chocolate, and a lot of it doesn't taste that great. I mean, I grew up. We would go to in Brookline, Massachusetts, to the kosher stores and get the kosher chocolate. It was not tasty. There are really, really wonderful chocolate makers who are making kosher chocolate, and a lot of people don't know about it. So events I've done for temples, and they've said, can you get kosher chocolate? I said, yes. Like a company, I don't know if you know Valrhona. It's a very well-known, famous chocolate company. They make beautiful kosher chocolate. And even in LA, we have a wonderful bean to bar chocolate maker called Letterpress, and he's in the Fairfax district, and he's making kosher chocolate. So you have to dig a little bit deeper. And there's some very good kosher chocolate that a lot of people don't know about.
What makes chocolate good as opposed to less good? I mean, it's chocolate. It's there's no bad, but what makes it exceptional?
I will say it depends on how you define chocolate. So what we grew up eating is called mass producer industrial chocolate. And that's Hershey's, Nestle's, Mars, all of those that I don't consider chocolate. I consider them candy because they don't have enough cocoa nib in them. There's something called the standard of identity for all foods. So to write chocolate on your chocolate, you only need 11% cocoa nib to call chocolate chocolate. I know, which is very,
That's
very, very
low.
low. So I would say there is bad chocolate when you're dealing with 11% cocoa nib, and the cocoa or the cacao comes from not very good cacao, like very poor quality that may not have been processed well, and it may have had it may have had mold in it and not taken care of well. Um, the farmers were paid very, very little to sell that cacao, And sadly, there is some child labor and some slave labor in that cacao process in the supply chain. And that is like a fact. Hershey's, Nestle's, Mars have all said we're going to try to get rid of it. They still have not. So I would say that is bad chocolate for sure. Then we're dealing with what we are eating now today is this new revolution. It's like a revolution and revelation in chocolate, which is the craft chocolate movement or the bean to bar movement, where makers are buying much higher quality cacao, paying the farmers more, guarantee no child labor, guarantee no slave labor, and they are roasting the beans very gently. It's like, probably a lot about coffee, right? And then how they just burn the coffee and nobody knows. Um, Industrial chocolate makers burn the cacao and they add things like vanillin, which is an imitation vanilla, and that it's a chemical that imitates vanilla to hide off notes of bad chocolate. So now our beautiful bean to bar makers aren't even adding vanilla because they're just roasting the beans to very low and slow. So you're getting the pure natural flavors of the bean, similar to wine. So craft chocolate, I consider like an agricultural product. And when that batch of cacao goes away, you'll never have that exact bar again. So it's almost like a new food. And I don't know if you know, chocolate comes from a fruit. Did you know that?
I don't think I did.
So this is a cocoa pod, and that's a fruit. And that fruit grows only 10 to 20 degrees above and below the equator. So, like, when we think of French chocolate, there's no cacao growing in France, Switzerland, Belgium. So we're switching how we think about chocolate. We're thinking about the origin of it. So it grows in West Africa and Asia and Central America and South America and Mexico. And then when you open it, that is the fruit that is inside our chocolate. So that white stuff is fruit and it tastes like lychee. And then inside of it are the little cocoa beans that need to be fermented to be made into chocolate. Did I
So
go too far on this tangent of how
I love
chocolate is made?
tangents.
Yes. Okay. I love it.
So where do the beans that you turn into magical chocolate come from?
So the beans come from all over the equator. The great thing about this chocolate world, this craft chocolate world, is it's a very small world. And when you're dealing with industrial chocolate, you have a farmer here, let's say in Africa, then you have a store, like a grocery store here, and there's probably 20 people in between that. The farmer who gets paid very little, and then the retailer who's making the most money, and about 20 people in the supply chain. In our craft chocolate world, there's me buying the beans, and then there's the farmer, and there's only a few brokers that are well known in this industry. So I would buy from one of these brokers who has already vetted the farmer to make sure there's wonderful cacao. And my cacao, I will try cacao from all over the world, wherever they're sourcing. So Tanzania, Madagascar, Vietnam, Belize, Ghana. So those would be bars that I would make. Good chocolate is when the farmer's getting paid a lot and everyone in the chain is happy and doing well.
So anyone looking to get the good chocolate, what do they need to look for?
You cannot buy any of these chocolates in a regular grocery store. They're not set up to sell them. Even Whole Foods, like that type of store, they are looking for something that might be called fair trade, which fair trade, while good, isn't as good as these craft makers who are doing something called direct trade, meaning they are trading directly with the farmer. Direct trade's not a certification, so you have to read the packaging, but I would encourage people to look at stores that are selling gourmet items, gourmet foods. A lot of gourmet cheese stores have a little chocolate section. A lot of really high-end coffee stores have a chocolate section. In a lot of cities, in big cities, there's a craft chocolate store somewhere, so you want to Google craft chocolate or bean to bar chocolate in my city. And then you want to find those buzzwords. Bean to bar and craft chocolate are the buzzwords you're looking for. If someone's selling them, they are going to be educated on what they're selling. And if I may tell you just a little tip about prices of chocolate, bean to bar chocolate is going to be more expensive. And I don't want people to freak out about a $10 bar, $11 bar, $12 bar, because the farmers are getting paid more. The cacao is much, much higher quality. But I'm going to just give you guys an example. Let's say you walk into a wine store, okay? And you have someone very, very wealthy next to you. Let's say you walk in with Bill Gates and you happen to walk in at the same time. Bill Gates says to the wine steward, "I'd like the best bottle of wine you have in your store." Bill Gates can probably afford a wine that you can't afford. I don't know how much everyone's making out there, but Bill Gates could probably afford, a $40,000 bottle of wine that for a Monday night dinner with, a spaghetti and red sauce. Let's say you and Bill Gates walked into a beautiful gourmet store that was selling an abundance of craft chocolate, and you both said, "I want the best chocolate." And first of all, best is also a personal choice. But let's say you love a Madagascar bar, which is citrusy and fruity. The most it's going to be is maybe $18, which is pretty pricey, but they range from 8 to 18 or 20, 25. You both can probably afford that bar, and you're going to savor it. You're not going to eat it the way you eat Doritos or M&Ms. You're going to slowly savor that $18 bar, and it should last you a little while. It's a luxury, but take your time and enjoy it. So that's what I tell people. That's what I tell my consumers to do.
What
Yeah,
are some of the best things to make with chocolate?
everything. um, uh, I I mean, I make, double chocolate chip cookies, and then I want to throw in dark milk and white in them. And then sometimes maybe a cocoa nib. Um, and then which gives you like the little crunch. So I like to use all parts of the cacao. So we have cocoa nibs are very bitter. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite desserts ever, which is cocoa nibs. Are have you do ever eat cocoa nibs? They're like a crunchy, nutty, bitter.
I think I've had them. I
Yeah.
not recently, but I do
Yes.
think I've eaten them.
Yes. So that's the heart of our cacao. That's what the cocoa bean, when you roast it, you grind it and it becomes a nib. But it's that's where all your antioxidants live and all the endorphins live, and all of the good stuff is in the cocoa nibs. There's no sugar. But what I love is a really good soft serve ice cream, like a vanilla soft serve ice cream. I sprinkle the cocoa nibs on it. So you had the very sweet vanilla ice cream, and then a homemade caramel sauce and some fleur de sel salt. So if you can serve ice cream, cocoa nibs, caramel, and salt, you will be everyone's hero, first of all. Another recipe I love is something Jose Andre once told me to make. I love him. Who doesn't love Jose Andre? He once told me to take a baguette and you cut it into rounds, and you take a very good piece of chocolate, dark chocolate, and you put it in the broiler, but you put it so quickly in the broiler that it melts, but you can't tell it melts, meaning it's still holding its shape, seconds. And then you put the best, Jose Andre, the best olive oil possible, drizzled, and then also some salt on it. So if you serve that for dessert, it is crazy. It's like people are like, because bread and chocolate is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
And that's what school children in France would eat after 3 o'clock every day.
Well,
You
that's
have a
your
piece,
snack.
that's your snack. So this is elevating that. And then, of course, chocolate truffles, which are only 3 ingredients: chocolate, cream, butter. That's all you need for chocolate truffles. Um, and then the beauty of chocolate truffles are you can add flavors to them different ways. So it doesn't have to be just a dark chocolate truffle. It can be a coffee chocolate truffle by steeping coffee in your cream. And then you have a coffee cream, and then you make a dark chocolate truffle. I just made a London fog truffle with like Earl Grey and vanilla. I mean, right?
It is a shame that you do not love chocolate. I feel like I've gotten an entire chocolate education, so thank you for that. Do you have any final chocolate food for thought that you want to share?
Yeah, I really want people to read packages and be aware. And I want them to go out and just ask questions of their grocers. Like we have grocers, and like ask them, where is this chocolate from? Or just be a little more educated about chocolate. And it will change the whole kind of supply chain. And another tip for the winter, do you want another food yummy tip? Um,
Of course.
Don't go and buy hot chocolate or hot cocoa. You should be making drinking chocolate, and everyone can. So basically, buy a really high quality either chocolate bar or a fine Valrhona chocolate at a you can buy everything online as well, and chop up that chocolate and put it in a cup, and you want a lot of it. You just eyeball it, chalk up chocolate, and then warm up your milk, your oat milk, your soy, throw it over that chopped chocolate and use a whisk, and you make a drinking chocolate the likes that you would get in Spain or France. So you never ever have to have that like kind of, you know, the hot cocoa is not drinking chocolate. This is like that thick, beautiful chocolate. I use like all my extra scraps of chocolate and make a drinking chocolate with it. And it's like life changing.
I have so much chocolate homework. I'm so
Uh-huh.
excited. What are the best chocolate or chocolate adjacent Jewish desserts?
Let's see. Um, well, I make the matzah crack every year. You've probably heard of it. It's like for Passover, you take the matzah, and then of course I'm making a homemade caramel, and then throwing tempered chocolate on it. You don't have to have tempered chocolate, but you can throw a really good chocolate on it, and then sprinkle it with all sorts of nuts and cocoa nibs. Don't forget your cocoa nibs. So that I love my matzah crack with really good chocolate. Again, I always make a chocolate macaroon. So I'll do the coconut macaroon, and I'll either make it at chocolate or I'll dip it in, like the bottom of the coconut macaroon, you dip it in chocolate. But when you're using really good chocolate, it just elevates everything.
I believe the lesson is the higher the quality and the better the chocolate, the more amazing your
Yeah,
chocolate experience is going to be.
of course. And there's only a few ingredients to a lot of these things. So what we say when we teach cooking is garbage in, garbage out. So you want no garbage in, so all deliciousness comes out.
Thank you so much for the
You're
chocolate
welcome.
education, Ruth. Where can people learn more about you and your classes and all things chocolate? You.
Oh, thank you. Yes. My website is chocolate-project.com. I have an amazing 2-day bean to bar workshop coming up that's life changing on January 11th and 12th. We're going to do 2 full days sourcing beans, roasting beans, grinding beans, making 2 to 3 types of chocolate, including a beautiful white chocolate, which is going to blow everyone's mind. On my website has everything. I also work at the Gourmandise School in Santa Monica, and you can check me out there in the Gourmandise School, their website. I do amazing chocolate and watercolor classes, which is the funnest thing because we taste unusual bonbons and then we watercolor paint what we taste. And I do that at a wonderful place called These Hands in Culver City, which is a great crafting place. I'll also do virtual chocolate tastings where I'll ship you a box of beautiful chocolate and we get online. And that happened during the pandemic. And we taste together all over the country. It's really fun.
If we all love chocolate, like a quarter of how much you love chocolate, we're
Yeah,
all going to be really loving chocolate.
that's right. That's right. I know. It's going to be a better world.
Definitely a better world with chocolate. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or your favorite podcast platform. And you can go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to get recipes and read the articles to go with each episode. And I believe we're going to have the wonderful, easy truffle recipe. So be sure to check that out. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, bon appetit.